credit and debit cards at the register to pay for our purchases, right? But in just a few days, that process is going to change. New chip card technology will go into effect on October 1st that will change the way we shop. Joining us today from San Francisco is Stephanie Erickson to tell us more. She joins us with Visa. Stephanie, welcome to Lowcountry Live.
Hi, good morning. Thanks, Erin.
Yeah, so, this is going to make a big difference. So what are some of these changes that are happening with credit and debit cards? And, how are we going to be affected?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, more and more consumers are getting credit and debit cards reissued to them that have a chip on them, in addition to still having the mag stripe on the back, because we know it does take several years for all of the cards to be reissued and all of the merchant location terminals to be upgraded to read the chip. But as we get to more and more transactions that are going to be happening using the chip instead of the mag stripe on the card, we're going to get to even greater security of using your payments cards.
And as the consumer, that's definitely what we love to hear, more secure experience. But how are these new cards going to change everything for us, from a shopping standpoint when we're at the register?
Yeah, for the consumer experience, it'll be a little bit different than what they do today when they're making purchases. Rather than swiping the mag stripe on the back of the card, they'll begin to be inserting the chip end of their card into the terminal, and then the terminal will prompt them to please leave the card in the terminal until the transaction amount is known, because that transaction amount is one of the pieces of information that's used by the chip to generate a unique code that changes with each transaction. And then once that code's generated, the terminal will tell the cardholder it's okay to take their card out of the terminal. And then the rest of the transactions just like you do today.
So this, though, is going to make, a big difference with enhancing our payment security. How does that all work, and why is it going to be so much better overall?
Yeah, that chip card is actually generating that one-time code that changes with each transaction. And the benefit of that is if a criminal hacks into the merchant's data system and steals that data, they can't use it to create counterfeit cards, which is roughly 2/3 of the fraud that we see in stores today. So as we move to more and more of the transactions actually being used by the chip, the data that's going through the system is going to be a lot more secure and a lot less attractive for criminals to try to steal.
Okay, so once we make this changeover, what happens? Let's say I go and I try to make a payment with a chip card at a terminal that hasn't been converted yet. Are our payments still secure when we do that?
Yes, we still secure all of the transactions that move through the network. We use over 500 different points of data to detect whether or not the transaction looks like the transaction that's in your normal spending pattern and whether or not it looks like it's high risk. But the great thing about chip is it gives us more data to be able to have even greater confidence that that transaction's not fraudulent. But consumers are always protected with zero liability fraud protection. This chip data is just going to give us greater benefit of making sure that we can make sure that it's also not a counterfeit transaction, even though consumers aren't liable for any fraud.
All right, Stephanie, really quickly, where can we go to get more information on all of this?
Yes, you can go to visachip.com. There's a lot of great videos there and more information about chip technologies for consumers as well as for merchants.
All right, Stephanie Erickson with Visa with such great information that will affect all of us. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on Lowcountry Live, and stick with us. We've got much more right here after the break.